There comes a momensulent and invisible when the very thing that once saved you becomes the thing that now holds you hostage. You don't hear the chains rattle. You don't feel the walls closing in. Not at first. Because what imprisons you today was once your armor. It was the mindset that helped you survive. But survival and ascension are not the same thing. You see, survival builds a fortress around the soul. And in that fortress, you learn to endure, you learn to calculate, protect, defend. But a fortress is still a cage when the war is over. And for most people, the war ended years ago, but they're still dressing for battle, still speaking in the language of wounds, still seeing the world through the eyes of the abandoned, the betrayed, the overlooked. But here's the brutal truth. The mindset that made you can't take you higher. It was designed to get you through the night, not into the light. It was forged in pain, fear, scarcity, and it's obsolete the moment you decide to evolve. Carl Jung understood this with terrifying clarity. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So many people call stagnation loyalty. They call fear intuition. They call pride self-respect. They live not from clarity, but from conditioned hallucinations, mistaking the echoes of past trauma for the voice of wisdom. Let me ask you something. Who were you when you first decided who you had to be? Who taught you that anger was strength, that silence was safety, that ambition was dangerous, or love had to be earned? That people will leave if you tell the truth? Because the part of you that made those decisions was a child. And you built your identity on the blueprint of a frightened child's logic. Now you're grown. And if you want to rise, truly rise, you have to confront the twisted architect in your psyche who built a palace out of pain. That's the confrontation. Not with the world, not with the people who hurt you, with the you who was built in their image. The you who was a response, not a creation. This is syphoria, psychological euphoria of dismantling the prison you forgot you lived in, of realizing that the voices in your head are not you, they are echoes, that your reflexes are not instinct, they are programming, that your rage is not power, it is ungrieved pain. And when you face that, you begin to break the curse. Mindset is not some trendy concept tossed around by influencers and gurus. Mindset is fate. It is the operating system of your soul. And most people never update it. They're running on mental software written by trauma, culture, fear, and family dysfunction. They're playing a game they never chose with rules. They never questioned. But what if you did question it? What if you truly asked, why do I believe what I believe? Who benefits from this belief? Who would I become if I let it go? You want power? Start there. Because the most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest. He's the one who rebuilt his belief system from scratch, who no longer needs the world to agree with him. Who knows that clarity is more sacred than validation, that inner peace is more valuable than reputation? Clarity, true, clarity is rare because it costs everything. You have to let go of who you were told to be. You have to admit that most of what you once fought for was an illusion. You have to stop negotiating with mediocrity. And most of all, you have to be willing to walk alone. That's the price of vision. That's the cost of purpose. And when vision arrives like lightning ripping through fog, it doesn't feel comforting. It feels like annihilation because it kills who you thought you were. It incinerates your excuses, your projections, your blame. A man with vision is a dangerous man because he can no longer be manipulated. He doesn't react, he chooses, he doesn't chase, he magnetizes, he doesn't complain, he adapts. Discipline becomes his religion, not because he's trying to impress the world, but because he knows that every action is a declaration of identity. Every habit is a vote for who you become. And he no longer votes for weakness. Discipline is sacred, not rigid, not obsessive, sacred. It's the self-respect to do what your higher self commanded, even when your lower self protests. And once you move with discipline, action becomes inevitable. Not frantic action, not anxious movement, focused strategic execution. You're not reacting to life, you're orchestrating it. You become a conductor of momentum. Every decision is precise. Every word is intentional. Every move has gravity. And yet, even in action, you're grateful. Not because everything is perfect, but because gratitude is the only state powerful enough to keep you grounded while you rise. It's not softness, it's sovereignty. You don't wait to feel grateful, you command it. You find beauty in adversity, power in heartbreak, wisdom in defeat. Because when you're truly grateful, you cannot be broken. You become liquid, flexible, untouchable. You move like water, adaptive, resilient, evolving with every storm. And when life hits hard, and it will, you don't collapse. You transmute. Pain becomes fuel. Failure becomes refinement. Rejection becomes redirection. You develop what Jung called individuation, becoming whole and not perfect, but whole. You no longer chase perfection. You integrate your shadow. You accept your darkness. And in doing so, you unlock a light the world cannot comprehend. This is not motivation. This is metamorphosis. This is the rebirth of a mind that refuses to be ruled by its past. This is the warpath of a soul reclaiming its throne. The mindset that made you was enough to survive. But now, you're not here to survive. You're here to rise, to reign, to redefine, to resurrect the parts of you buried beneath politeness, fear, shame, and generational lies. You're here to break every false ceiling they built above you. Because the mindset that made you can't take you higher. But the mindset you now choose, and it begins now, in this breath, not in some distant fantasy or self-help promise. Now, as you sit in the ruins of who you thought you had to be, there is only one commandment that remains unshakable. Become unrecognizable to the version of you that settled. Because the old self, the reactive, anxious, approval-seeking version, is already decaying in the presence of awareness. You've seen through the illusion now. You've tasted the divine ache of potential. You've felt the war drums of your higher self begin to beat beneath your skin. And you know you cannot go back. That's the secret they don't want you to understand. Once you begin to evolve, once you confront your inherited beliefs, your unspoken resentments, your masked insecurities, you become dangerous. Not to others, to the structure, to the lie, to every system, internal and external, that profits off your confusion. The most dangerous thing a man can do is think for himself, not emotionally react, not blindly rebel, but think with precision, clarity, and terrifying self-honesty. This is why you must rebuild your mental architecture like a ruthless sculptor, chipping away at every thought that no longer serves you. You will not rise with the mindset of a slave. You will not elevate carrying the neuroses of the wounded child. You will not ascend repeating the patterns that belong to men who died long before you were born. No, you will burn the script. You will silence the noise. You will learn to sit in stillness so long and so completely that your mind begins to reveal the deeper truths it's been hiding from you your whole life. The truth that comfort is a drug and most men are addicted. The truth that your triggers are not wholly only unhealed. The truth that you are not owed anything by life. Not fairness, not understanding, not even closure. But you owe life something. You owe it your clarity, you owe it your conviction. You owe it the absolute refusal to remain ordinary. Clarity. Not more information, not more opinions, just clarity. What do you want? Not what your culture wants, not what your parents want, not what your friends find acceptable. What does the deepest part of your soul ache for? Do you even know? Most don't. They know what they should want. The car, the girl, the lifestyle, the applause. But if you strip away the noise, what remains? That's where your power is. In the still, sacred knowing that has no audience. In the vision that requires no validation. In the purpose that feels like a quiet, relentless hunger in the chest. Purpose doesn't shout. It haunts. It returns night after night, whispering in a language older than words, asking, will you betray me again? You know what that betrayal feels like. The years you spent rationalizing your delay, the opportunities you watched evaporate while you hesitated, the relationships you ruined by showing up half alive. The mornings you woke up with a quiet ache and called it normal. That ache was your purpose, choking on your excuses. And the time has come to resurrect it. Not tomorrow, not next year, now. Because every second you spend compromising your higher vision is a second you are colluding with mediocrity. And mediocrity is not neutral, it's spiritual death in disguise. Discipline is your resurrection. You think you're tired? You're not tired, you're undisciplined. You think you're confused? You're not confused. You've just been avoiding clarity, because clarity demands action. Clarity reveals the path and the price. And deep down, most people fear paying it. But you're not most people. You wouldn't still be here listening if you were. You're the anomaly, the edge walker, the man or woman who still believes in inner revolutions, who doesn't just crave transformation, they demand it. And that demand must now translate into practice. No more bypassing, no more victimhood, no more waiting for the world to give you permission to be great. You don't need healing. You need initiation. Initiation into the life of a sovereign mind. Initiation into the realm where everything becomes your teacher pain. Betrayal, silence, solitude, failure. In this realm, you no longer ask, why me? You ask, what is this forging in me? Because all of it, every loss, every rejection, every delay is not a detour. It is the forge. The forge where your higher self is born, where clarity is sharpened into vision, where discipline is tempered into action, where resilience becomes a way of being, not a temporary mask. And from this furnace, you do not emerge the same. You do not return to old circles. You do not speak in old tones. You do not operate from old defaults. You terrify those who are still sleeping because you remind them of what they gave up on. You are a walking disruption to the status quo, not because you shout, but because you embody. Your presence becomes proof that transformation is possible, that self-mastery is real, that silence can be power, that stillness can be violent. And in this embodiment, you learn the final truth. The mindset that made you was never yours to begin with. It was inherited. It was implanted. It was a survival script passed down through generations of people who didn't know any better. But you do. So now, it's your responsibility, not just to heal, but to become, to build a new architecture of thought, to forge a new lineage, to become the blueprint that others didn't have. Because when you do, the future changes. And not just yours, but everyone who ever watches you rise. Then let us continue. Because once you rise, truly rise, you will feel something that no amount of comfort, distraction, or superficial success could ever replicate: the weightless gravity of alignment. Not balancy alignment, a life where your thoughts, your words, Your actions and your spirit all march to the same war drum. That's when you stop needing motivation. You become it. That's when you stop chasing confidence. You become conviction. That's when you stop playing the game. You become the architect of the arena. And people will notice, not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. You'll start to feel the subtle shift rooms begin to tilt when you enter. Conversations change. People lower their voices, not out of fear, but reverence. They sense something in you they can't name, but deeply feel. This one has faced their darkness and lived. And yet, you will also lose things. You will lose friendships built on old wounds. You will lose identities built on old roles. You will lose comfort, familiarity, the sweet numbness of blame. But you will gain something so sacred, so untouchable, that it makes every loss a sacred offering. Self-authorship. The pen is finally in your hands. You're no longer an actor in someone else's script, no longer a character built by culture. You are the writer, the director, the creator. And from this throne, you craft a new mythone, where you are not the hero who was rescued, but the god who rose from the wreckage. This myth doesn't require applause. It doesn't need proof, because the proof is in your posture, in the silence between your words, in the fire behind your gaze. You carry it like a crown made of scars and decisions. And with that crown comes responsibility, not the shallow kind, not the burden of performance or perfection, the responsibility to lead because others are watching, quietly, secretly, hoping you're real, hoping you don't collapse, hoping you're the one who proves it's possible to evolve without losing your soul. And you will be, not by pretending to be perfect, but by being profoundly honest, by speaking from your healed scars, not your open wounds, by standing alone when it's easier to follow, by staying silent when it's easier to impress, by acting with integrity when no one is watching. This is the path of the initiated, of the self-forged, of those who've shed the mindset that once made them. Because the mindset that made you was about safety. This new mindset, it's about sovereignty. The old mindset needed validation. The new one radiates self-certainty. The old mindset avoided pain. The new one metabolizes it into power. The old mindset worshipped comfort. The new one is forged in the fire of constant growth. You don't flinch anymore, not at betrayal, not at chaos, not even at loss. Because loss to you now is not the end. It's a clearing, the divine demolition before reinvention. And you don't fear starting over, because you know who's building now. And you trust that architect, because that architect is you. So burn it all if you must. Burn the expectations. Burn the excuses. Burn the false idols of who you thought you had to be. Burn the applause, the trophies, the carefully curated image. Let it all go. And from the ashes, carve something so true, so brutal, so widely sacred, that even your shadow bows to it. Because when you live like this, when you choose evolution over ego, when you sacrifice safety for soul, you stop being a person. You become a movement, a frequency, a force. And this world, it can't help but rearrange itself around someone like that. So walk, not timidly, but like a storm disguised as a man, with silence on your lips and war in your bones. And if they ask you who you are, you don't answer with words. You answer by rising. Then here is the ending clear, unflinching, eternal. So rise, not for the world, not for validation, not for revenge, not for applause. Rise for the part of you that never stopped believing. The part of you that survived the numb years, the quiet betrayals, the long nights of confusion and rage. The part of you that carried the weight in silence, that kept moving when no one was watching, that whispered, more is possible, when everything around you screamed, this is it. Rise for the child in you who was told to shrink. Rise for the warrior in you who was told to wait. Rise for the sovereign in you who was told to obey. Because now, finally, you remember, you were never meant to conform. You were meant to confront. You were never meant to belong. You were meant to become. So let them talk, let them doubt, let them label. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be undeniable. A living reminder that the human spirit is not to be tamed. Not by fear, not by the past, not by the quiet pressures of a dying society. The mindset that made you, it did its job. It got you here. But this next chapter, this divine, unrelenting, soul-shattering chapter, it requires a new mind, a new fire, a new self. So go, burn clean, speak truth, move with thunder, and never ever lower your voice to fit into rooms you were born to redesign. This is your initiation. This is your ascent. This is your revolution. And it starts, as all revolutions do, with a decision. Make it now.